Hey, this is Michael Kramer.
This is Sarah Nofke.
Hey guys, this is Ernie Howard.
Hey, this is Scott Moon, and you're listening to 30 Minute
Author Interviews with Preston Lay.
Woohoo!
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of 30-Minute Author Interviews. There is a giveaway with this week's episode, but before I tell you about it, let me tell you about our two sponsors. First up is the Galactic Satori Chronicles by Nick Breaker and Paul E. Hicks. The Galactic Satori Chronicles. A thirst for revenge sends one man on a deadly journey through the galaxy in this adrenaline-pumping new series. Asher is a young man whose world is turned upside down when he discovers that his fiance's death has been directly caused by an imminent alien invasion. Projecting their consciousness into unsuspecting men and women, these aliens are learning exactly how to use humanity's own selfishness and greed as weapons against them. Asher bands together with a group of friends, and these four MIT co-eds are more than meets the eye and go to battle with those who are intent on destroying our planet. Out of the Gray by Patricia Gilliam. Aliens, politics, and murder. Only the first one is new. When an Earth-based terrorist group targets Hanaria's ambassador, two teenagers become entrapped in the conflict. Alex Vernon is the son of an Earth Independence Party representative and doesn't want to follow his father's path of political manipulation and corruption. Rika Miller is the adopted daughter of an engineer and nurse who later discovers she's not human but Hanarian. Alex must decide between his family loyalties and saving the life of an alien he's been taught to fear and hate, while Rika searches for the truth of what happened to her birth parents. The Galactic Satori Chronicles by Nick Breaker and Paul E. Hicks and Out of the Gray by Patricia Gilliam can both be found on Amazon. Or just head on over to Leigendarium.com, check out the show notes for this episode, and in the show notes we will include a link where you can check out both of these books on Amazon and learn more about them and buy them if you would like to. And now for the giveaway that I was telling you about. This week our guest is author Devon C. Ford, and he would like to give one person the chance to win an ebook copy of his entire series After It Happened. That is all 6 books in the series that you will win. What do you need to do in order to get registered? It's simple. Head on over to Leigendarium.com, find the show notes for this episode, and tell us what was your favorite part of the episode. Now enjoy our interview with Devon C. Ford. Welcome everybody to this week's episode of 30-Minute Author Interviews. This week we are joined by Devon C. Ford. Thank you for taking time out of your day and coming on 30-Minute Author Interviews.
My pleasure, Preston. Hi.
We like to start each podcast with a segment that we call Two Truths and a Lie, where you tell me 2 truths and a lie about yourself, and I try to guess it right. I'm going to try to start a winning streak. Started a losing streak last week, so hoping to turn that one around. So if you can you tell me 2 truths and a lie about yourself?
Okay. I was in the Guinness World Book of Records. I set off airport metal detectors, even if I've got nothing in my pockets. And the only thing I failed in school was English.
All right. So I'm going to try some new strategy maybe. I hope the Guinness World Record is true because that would be pretty cool. But it would be also, let's see, I've narrowed it down to either the metal detector one or the only thing you failed in high school was English. For some reason, I'm going to guess the lie is the only subject you failed in high school was English.
Oh, you were so close as well. You're down to 50-50.
Dang it. So the metal detector one's the lie.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed I don't, because a while ago I a real bad injury in my hand. So one of my bones in my hand it looks like the Terminator. but it's just not cool, and I don't get any extra power or anything. It doesn't even set off metal detectors. The first time I flew after the operation, I was really disappointed.
That's funny. So you were in the Guinness Book of World Records. What for?
I played in the longest game of rugby in history. I say was because that record's been beaten now by about 4 hours. But we played for over 26 hours continuously, 2 teams, all through the night, all through the day, raising money for charity. That was a few years ago now. But they say it was the record's just recently been beaten this May.
Wow, that's a long rugby game.
It really was. I think the final score was something like 1,180 versus 1,200 and something.
Oh, that is so funny.
Yeah.
So, did you play rugby professionally, or was this just something you did for fun?
No, I've played since I was a kid. I played through as an adult, very heavily involved in my local club, and sadly I broke my hand, so that stopped me actually playing. But I got into refereeing, and I coach. I don't know what would the equivalent year in American school be. They're all 13, 14, so they're first year of high school here. So whatever that would be in your grade system.
Yeah, that's either. I would say that's either 8th grade here, 8th or 9th.
Could be
8th or 9th grade. Yeah,
yeah.
I would say it's either last year of middle school here, or where I guess each place is a little different here. For me, middle school was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And then high school was 9, 10, 11, and 12. And I turned 16, I think, in my sophomore year, my 10th grade year. So, yeah, right. I would say it's probably 8th or 9th grade here.
Yeah, see, you'd turn 16 in year 11 here, okay. So might be one. But yeah, teenage boys, I coach a teenage boys rugby team. They give me a lot of grief, and they put in a lot of hard work, and I really enjoy it. But it's a way of staying, because I can't play anymore, so that's a way of staying involved with the club and with the sport.
I've tried to watch rugby every now and then. It's fun to watch. Some of the rules I don't quite understand, but
it can be a little bit. They're laws, not rules.
No laws.
Yeah, it can be a little bit complicated. It's basically like American football, but you can't pass forwards and you don't wear scaffolding. That's basically it.
Now, I've always been a little curious. I have my own theory. Do you think our football players get injured more than rugby players?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I think it's probably the injuries could be worse because of the protective equipment.
That's what I've told my wife.
If you're wearing a full spacesuit and a motorbike helmet, you can run into everything feeling great, and the person you hit doesn't feel so great. But when you've got nothing but a little bit of padding at best, I don't know. They're obviously both very tough physical sports. But yeah, you start playing contact sports, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
But I think the severity of the injuries, from what I've seen, are worse when people are wearing big helmets.
Yeah, that's always been my theory whenever you see people get hurt in football here. I tell my wife, I said, I bet that if you had the football players here wear the equipment or the lack of that rugby players have, I think it would be a lot safer, because people wouldn't lead with their heads and just fly into each other, because, like you said, they kind of feel invincible wearing all that stuff. So,
yeah. I mean, I suppose the big difference between the sports is that rugby match is over in an hour and a half, as opposed to taking the
that's right
6 hours. The constant messages from your sponsors.
That's right. That's why I like watching soccer so much. I'm a big.
Well, we won't go there.
Yeah,
that's what we call football, and I don't think I've ever actually watched a whole match.
Yeah, I'm a big. You call it football over there. I'm a big soccer fan.
Right.
So that's one thing I love about it, is when I sit down to watch a game, It's 45 minutes plus a few extra minutes for stoppage time, halftime, and then 45 minutes and it's over. I don't have to...
Yeah, you still get something done with your day then.
That's right. I set aside 2 hours to watch soccer. If you want to watch a football game, you got to set aside a whole day because it takes
pretty much, yeah, and the night, and yeah.
It's so crazy. Oh, but anyway, enough about sports.
Yep.
We're here to talk about you and your book. So, for my people that might not know who you are or what you do, can you give them your little author bio on who you are and what you do?
Oh, okay, author bio. I first published April of last year, April of 2016, with the first 3 of my first series, the After It Happened series. That series went on to 6 books, where I recently finished it in end of June of this year. And it's a viral pandemic, post-apocalyptic story. So a bug kills most people on the planet. And this follows the lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it, group of survivors who band together and learn to trust each other, get on with each other. I've said this before in interviews. You can, with any post-apocalyptic or zombie apocalypse, any end of the world stuff, you can play bingo with the things that they have to do, the people that they have to meet, the types of things. You know, you're not saying you'll get someone with barbed wire around a baseball bat, but you'll get those kind of scenarios popping up. But I've always tried to keep the story about the people and their interactions and the way they progress and how they learn to work together.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of book 1 right now, and I'm enjoying it, and I love the characters that you've set up. I love how in the first couple chapters when you meet the first 2 characters, Dan and is it Neil? Neil. Yeah. They're flawed almost right out of the gate. You see their flaws as soon as you meet them.
Nobody's perfect, and this is what kind of sets the main hero aside, because he doesn't want to be the hero, doesn't want to be the leader. He's very reluctant, but he's the best person for the job. But the funny thing is that everyone else is broken by what's happened. His life was broken before, which will come out later on in the books. But what actually happened makes him kind of complete. So he's kind of like he's a complete anti-hero in a lot of ways. But yeah, they are flawed. People miss shots. People make mistakes. None of them are ex-SEAL Team 6 or anything like that you get in every other book. And yeah, they're real people.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I've really enjoyed so far. Especially with,
there's a lot more of that to come.
Yeah, especially with Neil and all the different accents that he does, joking around and stuff. He's a fun character. When you first initially created those characters, is that how you created them?
My character creation is a weird process. There are some characters who are just versions of people that I know with different names. There are characters who in my head look like people I know, but have the personality of someone else or the sense of humor of someone else. So I take bits from pretty much everywhere I go. I'll meet random people, and they won't even know, but they will influence a character at some point in a book in the future. At a random chance meeting in France last year with a Canadian woman. We spoke briefly and just about a conversation about just people in general, and I couldn't get one thing she said out of my head, and she actually became a character in the 5th and the 6th books.
That's awesome. How do you go about choosing the names for the characters in your book? Is there a process, or you just randomly pick names?
Sometimes I randomly pick names. If there is a process of anything, my process usually involves me shouting for my wife and going, right, give me a name for a male, mid-30s. They do this, they like this, and this is what and she will come up with 3 or 4 suggestions. I go, I like that one. And so, yeah, That's my wife's creative input to the books. She comes up with the names mostly.
That's funny. I've never heard that one before. That's
yeah,
funny.
she presented me with a contract for a percentage stake in it as well.
That is great.
There are some other characters that are, so they've changed people that I kind of know in real life. One of my beta readers appeared in the final books as this kind of giant Russian character. Not to give any spoilers away, but he's a very, very colourful character, which you'll meet in book 6, and he was inspired by one of my beta readers.
That's pretty interesting. So, of your characters that you have, which one do you identify with the most?
The dog.
Why?
Just because ignorance is bliss, and everyone else is worrying about these things. Wouldn't it be so much more fun just to think food, water, sleep? Given any chance of coming back in any life, I'd rather be a cat or a dog.
Yeah, I always look at my dogs, and when they're like, just one of our dogs is a Yorkie, and she got an added, like, when she's ready for bed, you have to go to bed, and so she doesn't really bark. She'll sit at our feet and she'll just stare at us, and then if we don't acknowledge her, she'll just do this little and so I'll look at her and be like, look, if you are tired, you can go to bed. And I'll look at her and I'll be like, your life is just so rough, isn't it? All you do is you lay around, you sleep, you eat, you get petted, and you repeat it. And so, yeah, I'd love to come back as a dog. That'd be a fun life. Which one of your characters do you wish you were more like?
Again, where you are in the story, you might not, or you won't fully appreciate this yet. The one that I wish I was most like would be Leah.
I've met her, yeah.
You've met current Leah. You haven't met future Leah.
Okay.
Leah is, to me, epitomizes the resilience of human nature, all the good parts. She is how she is because she's a product of her environment to start with, and she becomes how she becomes because of that same environment. And that's not to say she becomes a bad person or makes decisions that you shouldn't make. She does what she needs to do to survive in the world that she finds herself in. She is purely adapt and survive, and she is the biggest inspiration of the story for me.
I just met their group just became 7 people. We just had Jimmy, Kevin, Andrew join the group, and I'm at your chapter called New World Order.
Okay. You've obviously been on a roller coaster before. This is the bit where, like, you're being dragged up and up and up and up and up, and nowhere near dropping off the top yet.
Okay.
To me, I mean, I'm very critical of my own work. I'm very, very critical of my first book, especially. It's my least favorite because I not to say that I'm the best writer in the world at all. That's not. But if it's not the case, but if you're doing something, you're going to learn by the process of doing it. And now I've written 8, 9 books, and I've got 6 published. But at the end of book 6 and the start of book 1, it's almost like someone's taken me away and given me some quite intense training in writing. So I cringe when I read book 1 at the start, because I know my writing later on is far better. So if people get through book 1, they find themselves kind of trapped in this story that they can't get out of, and they can't let go. And people dropping off in between books is very rare, from what I've been told with these. If you get through book 1, you kind of have to see it through to the end.
Do you ever think you'll go back and rewrite book 1?
I don't think that would. I don't think that would make the story right.
Okay.
I think that would. It is what it is. It is my debut book. So for my debut book to give me a reason to think constantly, I can do better than that, I don't see as a bad thing.
Yeah, I know authors always try to get better and better make each book better than the last one, and just keep improving.
Yeah.
how many years pass from book 1 Survival to book 6 Rebellion?
No spoilers, but from the beginning of the story to the end of the story is less than 3 years.
Okay. Oh, so it'll be interesting to see how Leah grows then, because she's 12 in book 1, or where I'm at in book 1. She's 12, right?
She's a kid, but I mean, the age where you're not a kid anymore depends on where you are in the world and what you go through. As a kid living in the UK at 12, she's still a kid for years. In the situation she finds herself, she has to stop being a kid, or chooses to stop being a kid, quite quickly.
So you said that just get through book 1 and then you'll be sucked into the story. How has your writing process changed from book to book? Has it changed? Has it stayed kind of the same?
Yeah, it has changed. I mean, you don't do anything to not get better at it, and not that I'm like one of those really competitive people that, everything you do, you always look for some form of improvement. And to me, writing, I do treat it professionally. So I've gone from writing down some notes and scribbling it into a story and throwing it together and see what happens, to in-depth research and a lot of sit down and planning, even brainstorming ideas, exploring different avenues for potential story changes, and all of that then is completely subject to change, because when I'm in the middle of it, and if the story goes a different way by itself, you've got to follow it.
What kind of research did you have to do for your After It Happened series?
Quite a lot. There was one bit where I was stalling, and I pretty much got in the car, drove to the Eurotunnel, drove through to the south of France, spent a week in the south of France, climbing mountains, walking around, taking photos, looking at things. The cover for book 5 is the photo that I actually took, one of 1,000, getting lots of funny looks from people, wondering what this weird Englishman's doing in the south of France, taking pictures of everything. But I had to go and the story ends up in a place called Sanctuary, and Sanctuary doesn't exist. Sanctuary is 4 different places that I visited and basically merged together in my head. But you have to see it to actually get it right. A 3,000-mile road trip was one of them, which for people in the UK is a long time in a car.
Right. You had told me off the air that for part of your research you had to forgo using the internet, and you said you had to meet a contact in secret. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's a sticky subject, and not something you can go and stick into Google. Bring out your computer, click on how to make a homemade bomb, and just basically wait for MI5 to put the door in. It's if I was in the States, I'd have the FBI warning flash up on my screen or something. So I've got some contacts through contacts. I spoke to someone who has experienced in the military career a lot of explosive issues, and yeah, let's just say we didn't want an electronic record of the conversation, but I had to go and discuss to accurately describe how things could be made. Not that I give instructions or anything like that, but to give a form of authenticity to the structure of a device and a lot of authenticity to the way it detonated. I've had to go and meet someone to discuss making homemade IEDs.
Now, one thing that kind of sets this apart from other books in this genre is your book is set where you live. It's set in the UK, and a lot of times when you read books like this, these post-apocalyptic survival kind of stories, they're set in the United States. At least that's what we get here. Your publisher told me that the book has been a very good success here in America, that it sells better here in America than the UK. Did you imagine that would even happen when you started writing this?
I had very, in a self-effacing way, I had very low expectations of how the book would do, and for it to have anywhere near the success it has still been a shock. I'm not surprised I have a big US audience, because if you look at a massive percentage of the books in that genre that are being bought in the world, nearly all of that is in the States. So in terms of the economics of it, I'm not surprised. In terms of the fans buying into the story and falling in love with it, I am surprised. I've got a good deal of success and following in the UK, and the fact that it is so different is seen as a lot of plus points, because it's almost like, for a lot of people in the States, it's almost like a little bit of a step out of known culture. And I've also in contact with a lot of other authors, especially doing things like zombie fiction in the UK. You can't really do zombie fiction when you've got a double-barrel shotgun and an air rifle and a kitchen knife. In the States, the books, everyone's like an ex-ranger, or someone's got a big bag full of guns, which is entirely feasible. But in the UK, we don't really have access to those kind of weapons. So it's culturally very different for the genre.
I was going to ask you, what are the gun laws in the UK? Because, as you said, it's quite different, and it's apparent in the book when you're reading it, especially when I forget if it was Leah or Penny that saw Dan with the gun, and it kind of scared him for a second.
Yeah, I'll be honest, the majority of people in the UK, the vast, overwhelming majority, the only time they will ever see a sidearm, a handgun, will be on the leg of an armed police officer, and the armed police officers are very few and far between. Most people will go their whole life without ever seeing a real Glock. Pump action shotguns, they're very rare in this country, and they're limited to 3 shots. Whereas in some states, I'm told you can actually just go into your version of our Asda, go into Walmart and pick one off the shelf. The concept of access to guns isn't just different; it's totally alien between the two countries.
What was your biggest challenge that you came across as you were writing your After It Happened series?
The biggest challenge, it wasn't in creating the story or writing. The biggest challenge was actually in self-belief that other people want to read it, to be honest. Like a lot of first-time authors, you sat on this story that turns out to be a success for a year longer than you should have done, because you were worried that people might not like it.
Since it's been a good success here in America, has that changed your writing process? Do you focus more on the American audience now that you write, or do you just write the story the way you want to write it?
No, I think the biggest influence on my writing style has been since I've been working with my Audible publisher, Podium Publishing, and I write now, and whether it's intentional or not, I hear the narrator reading back my story to me. So that's probably had the biggest influence on it. And I listen to a lot of Audibles as well, because believe it or not, I don't get much time to read, and we've just spent 2 weeks on honeymoon, and I was reading every day. But that's for someone whose life is books. I don't really get a chance to sit down and read too much. So yeah, I listen to a lot of Audible. I think that's affected some of the writing style, but I haven't changed my style to appeal to stateside readers overly. No.
Okay. Yeah. The Audible book's amazing. You have R.C. Bray.
So happy about that.
Oh, at first when I had to look up who it was. At first I thought somehow you got I'm going to say his name wrong. Is it Idris Elba?
Idris Elba. Yeah.
It sounds like him reading your novel, honestly. And so I looked this guy up. I was like, is this who I think it is? And then it was R.C. Bray. And he's done Andy Weir's The Martian, which I've listened to. He does Helldivers by Nicholas Sansbury Smith.
I'm listening to that. Literally, I'm listening to Helldivers 2 right now. I love that one.
Yeah.
Arisen, absolutely. I'm Michael Fuchs. I'm just going to jump on the bandwagon here and say, hurry up with books with the next book. Get to the end of the original series. I nearly threw my headphones across the room and I realised I couldn't download the next one.
How did you get R.C. Bray to read your novel or do the audiobook? Did you have any say in that, or is that the publisher?
I did. And you know what? I very nearly turned him down.
Oh, really?
I said my audibles are through Podium, and it was the editors there, the main guy, Greg Lawrence, who said, I want R.C. Bray for this. And I'm like, well, hang on, he's American. How is he going to read an English story? And then they said, well, have a think about it. They sent me a copy of The Martian, which I then listened to pretty much straight through and then started again, because regardless of what language or setting the book's written in, that man could read me the Chinese menu and I would buy it. He is an absolute, when you say you've got authors at the top of their game, there are narrators who are at the top of their game, and to me, R.C. Bray he's the only person that can keep my kids quiet in the car.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he is a master, and he's just a great fun guy to work with as well, and I'm really happy that I actually listened to the advice, and I spoke to Michael Fuchs as well, the author of Arisen series, and he said, look, regardless of where it's set, trust me, people follow R.C. Bray, they don't follow us. And that was an interesting concept, because readers follow authors, Audible subscribers follow narrators. Mm-hmm. So I've got new fans left, right, and centre since the Audibles came out. People have never heard of me because they don't read books, but they listen to books and they will buy anything that R.C. Bray reads. So basically, I just kind of hacked into his fan base that have now become partly my fan base, which is, I'm happy with that all around.
Yeah, they definitely follow narrators. I'm like that with Michael Kramer is one of my favorite narrators. I listen to that guy read the dictionary. But that's funny. R.C. Bray's the only thing that can keep the kids quiet in the car. It's just a little too loud, or they're arguing. Just throw in an audiobook.
Yeah, but they both try and have two conversations. That's my smaller ones. They try and have two conversations at once, and they're arguing with each other. We just press play and just listen to them drift off into silence with their heads cocked, listening. Thinking, just going to park the car and just get out, leave it running, and I'll be back in an hour.
That's so funny. Well, speaking of the audiobook, you have a clip that we're going to play. So here is a clip of R.C. Bray reading from your novel.
Enjoy.
Gone to the dogs. Leah was unsettled by Ash's behavior. She had never seen him act like that, but Dan had locked him away, so obviously it wasn't an issue. She trusted Dan's instincts. He should have trusted them too. She walked along the aisles, looking for anything of interest as the others worked hard stacking tin cans into the bags for life in the trolleys. She reached the section where the bakery had been, expecting to find the bread and cakes rotted away as in the other shops she had seen, only they weren't. They weren't there at all. The packaging had all been ripped open, leaving a mess of torn wrappers on the floor. She froze, trying to figure out what she was seeing. She couldn't make sense of it. Why would people have ripped it all up like that when they could have just opened it? The scream cut through her pondering. It cut through the very air like a serrated blade. She hoisted her weapon and sprinted the 3 aisles to where the noise had come from. She was met with 3 of the team all looking terrified. Jimmy was the only one to be switched on. "Mark!" he said aloud, counting the only one of them not there. He automatically discounted it being Dan, unless he was the one to have elicited the scream from someone else. Another scream, slightly further away, and this time it continued in panic and pain. Leah ran towards the sound. She later realized that deep down, she was that kind of person. People always said, "Oh, if that happens, I'd do this." They reeled off their actions to any given scenario, not realizing that they would probably do the complete opposite. Very few people had the natural instinct to run towards danger when every fiber of your body wanted you to flee and protect yourself. She reached the end of the aisle and turned. What she saw would stay with her forever. Mark was bleeding heavily and jerking like a float on a fishing line. The jerking and the bleeding were caused by the 4 or 5, she couldn't be sure because they moved too much, dogs that were ripping him apart. They were 10 meters away, and she let out an involuntary cry of shock. 2 of them looked up at her. They were filthy, mangy, cruel-looking creatures. The one nearest her was a thin Staffordshire Bull Terrier, and it still wore a ragged collar once put around its neck by a loving owner. The yellow eyes fixed on her as it let out a savage snarl. Along with another rangy-looking mongrel, it launched itself at her, feet scrabbling desperately for purchase on the shiny floor. Leah reacted. Most people would freeze or scream in terror. Most people would get killed by the pack of wild dogs. Most people weren't carrying weapons, however. She dropped to put her right knee on the floor as she raised the weapon and flicked off the safety all in one fluid movement. Bang, 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 bang. The force of the launch had given the squat terrier a terrible momentum, which served no purpose other than to propel its dead body across the ground, where it slid to a bloody stop against her left boot. The mongrel had been stopped in its tracks meters away by her second double tap, but the other 3 paused in their attack of the now silent Mark and stared at her. Dogs weren't supposed to do that, she thought, losing valuable seconds of reaction time. They were supposed to be scared of loud noises. These dogs weren't. They had banded together, more natural a reaction than the cohesion of their own group of survivors. The reason this area was devoid of signs of looting was because of this vicious pack of killers. They tolerated no intrusion into their territory, and they also wasted no meat. The 2 dead dogs represented a significant change in opposition number to Leah, she reasoned, as she lined up to kill the other 3. What she didn't know was that the 5 she saw were only the advance party. She heard growling and the noise of claws on the floor, making a swarm of clacking noises as more of the pack attacked from behind her. She flew to her feet. "Climb!" she screamed at the 3 dumbstruck scavengers. They scrambled up onto the shelves, a last trailing limb only just getting out of reach of the snapping jaws. "Dan! Dan!" Leah bawled, not out of panic, but to warn him to get off the ground. They were trapped on wobbling shelves, a horde of ferocious teeth hungrily flowing behind them and making attempts to jump to reach the intruders. Leah tried to turn and kneel up, but the shelf wobbled too much. Afraid of falling into the mass of murderous teeth below, she carefully shifted her weight in an attempt to bring the weapon to bear on the wild animals, all the while bawling Dan's name.
Well, that was a clip of R.C. Bray reading. Actually, what you did for the audio version is you have the first 2 novels together in one audiobook. So
yeah, we decided there's 6 books, but they're not very long books. There was a question asked on social media that, I don't know if I'm jumping your toes here, apologies if I am. Did I write all of it and then split it up? No, but I've written the whole story and put it into sections which keep my attention. I think we're so set now with having our attention set to 45 minutes. So everything's a box set, or sitting down for 2 hours. It's kind of like being phased out with on-demand TV and everything now. So I've created the books themselves are 6 parts of one story, if you like. But because of the length of the books, between myself and Podium, we agreed that it be 3 downloads. So you've got books 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6. So you've got 3 omnibus editions to cover all 6 books, which I think makes them far more value for money and would appeal to the fans more if they're getting the 2 books in together.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And if you're interested in it, just go to Audible and just look for After It Happened. Search for After It Happened. It's by Devon C. Ford. Book the omnibus for audiobook omnibus for the book 1 and 2 is out now. Do you know when the next audio file is going to be out in the wild?
I do. Books 3 and 4 will be out. I'm doing air quotes here. The last week of October. Okay. No firm date on the final bit. That's going to be around end of this year, start of next year. I'm hoping, but yeah, books 3 and 4, Omnibus 2, will be out late October.
Okay. And you can also get, I'm having to pull it up real quick. You can actually also get the omnibus for book 1 and 2 together. So you can get the Kindle version of book 1 and 2 together for $5.99, and then add the audiobook to it for, I think it's $7.49.
Yeah, that's been done obviously to jump in with the Whisper Sync, and just to reward a bit of people with the getting their audibles on there.
So definitely pick it up. I'm listening to it now, and I'm highly enjoying it. I did have another question. I wanted 2 more questions I wanted to ask you about your series. The first one, I'll do the easier one first. Your book, in your books, or at least in the first one so far, the chapters are short, and they're short enough to where you're going to start reading it and say, I can read one more chapter, I got time. I can read one more chapter, I can read one more chapter, and then you're going to be up too late because the chapters are so short that you can read several chapters and not feel guilty. Did you do that intentionally when you were writing the book?
I didn't. You just reminded me of a review, I think from an Australian reviewer on Amazon, and they did exactly that. They just got caught in with it and actually missed their train stop, so they had to go to the end of the line, turn around, and come back. Which I feel bad for them. I feel partly responsible, but I also think it's, 1, hilarious, and 2, it says a lot about the book. No, it wasn't done like that deliberately. What I do differently, and again, it's not by design, it was by accident to start with. My chapter titles are kind of the point of the chapter. They're the hidden or not hidden message. And each chapter is written, well, it's been said it's written slightly more like a screenplay setting than an actual book, because each chapter changes over a scene or a point of view. So if it were hopefully to go to screen in the future, then you'd actually see that perspective would make more sense chapter-wise.
Oh, okay. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on is you originally put this out independently, and now the books have been picked up and they are put out by Vulpine Press.
That's right.
I'm saying that right?
Yeah.
Why did you decide to go from putting it out independently to signing with, air quotes, a traditional press?
Traditional press. Yeah, that was a big decision for me. I am indie at heart. I'm a self-publisher from scratch who I knew nothing about it, and everything I've learned about self-publishing I've learned on the way. I felt as though I'd hit a limit of what I could reasonably do at the time and with the experience that I had. I was just about to finish the series, and I've had a lot of offers from publishers, traditional publishers, a lot of vanity publishers as well, trying to take it on. But the one thing I couldn't do was to get the wider distribution. And so I felt like I'd come towards the end of what I could do with it. I'm working on new things. I've written new things, and I took a chance on a air quotes traditional publisher to see what difference they've made.
Will the rest of the stories you publish will it be with Vulpine Press? Have they bought the rights or whatever to any of them?
No, they've bought the rights to the written books of After It Happened in English. That's what I've contracted. Okay. I don't even know how to say that. Am I allowed to say? But no, I'm not tied to the publisher for everything in the future. They haven't bought me. They bought those stories.
Okay. I saw on on another interview that you did that you have had some reaction to the end of book 6, and I don't want to spoil anything. So one question kind of curious about is, do you think you will continue on past 6, or are you done with the After It Happened series and just going to leave it as is?
I really like the ending where it is. I can't give you any spoilers here because it would be a real kicker for people who haven't got to it yet. But let's just say certain things are left to the reader's imagination. And I field 2 or 3 emails a week saying, what happened? I'm like, that's not my story to tell. I've told my story and I've given you the ending. The bits that you don't know aren't up to me to tell you. So no, I won't. I promise myself I'm not going to revisit that series.
Okay.
But yeah, I think the best response I've seen to the ending of it is when I finally got my wife to read it. In fact, the last 10 minutes, I was watching her, and she kept gasping, and she was biting her nails, and I said, "Oh, what's the matter? What's the matter?" She just held her hand up with, "Shh." Got to the end. Now she's a very hard woman to please when it comes to a book, because her biggest criticism of anything is predictable. So any predictability. She got to the end, and instead of chucking her Kindle down and saying, "Oh, I saw that coming," she very reverently and quietly closed the Kindle, looked up at me, wiped a tear away. Now, get ready with your bleep sound effect.
Okay.
She looked at me and went, "You bastard." To me, that's kind of like a take a bow. Your work here is done.
That is so funny. Well, now I can't wait to get to book 6. So.
I can't wait, and because I know full well what will happen. I don't know anyone who's actually admitted reading book 6 and not had a little sniffle or something in their eye. Now I know full well when R.C. Bray gets to that final part, I'm probably going to be on the floor in the fetal position, just sobbing.
Oh wow! I need to hurry up and get through this series. So I know what I'm doing when we get off. That's right. What can your listeners expect from you, or not your listeners? What can your readers expect from you coming up over the next, I don't know, year or whatever? What do you have planned, and what can they look forward to?
They can expect a big change of pace. I've written one that is as yet untitled. Dropping in more names here now. Part 2 of that series will be written by Jacqueline Druger.
Okay.
Part 3 of that series will be written by P.A. Glaspie. Both post-apoc authors in America, lovely ladies. Hoping to go and meet them next year. But switching between different authors for a series it's a very exciting concept for a multi-author series. Let's say I've written book 1 of that. That is starts with your Brit abroad. There's elements of domestic terrorism, international war, nuclear winter, and all those good things. That should be. I don't know when that's coming out. I'm also writing a UK dystopian set a few hundred years in the future now, which is after a kind of political fallout here, and that's I think probably the best way I can describe that one is Blades versus Bullets. That one's coming up. That'll be the start of a new series. Also working on a psychological thriller, which is going to be in conjunction with a charity here for retired and families of forces personnel in the UK. The SSAFA. I'm going to be making some approaches to them. It's militarily based, but it's a psychological thriller based around some crime and war stuff. Some bits that are quite close to my heart. But that'll be out next year. Futuristic dystopian and a bit of nuclear war, just to whet people's appetites.
Sounds good. Well, here at 30-Minute Author Interviews and the Leigendarium, we're known for one question, and that question is, a penguin walks through the door right now wearing a sombrero. What does he say, and why is he here?
Okay. He's there after possibly the worst bachelor party ever. And he turns around and he says, I'm going to turn my back. I want to see my car keys when I turn back round. There'll be no questions asked.
There we go. And then before we leave, do you have any advice, whether it be for writing or for life, that you would like to share with the listeners?
Oh, for writing? A lot of people ask me about writing. Just write. Just get the story down. People worry that they want to be authors and they worry that they can't produce the final thing. When Ed Sheeran started busking on London Underground, he wasn't producing the music that he's producing now, because producing your music, publishing your writing is a process. What people need is storytellers. Editors do their jobs, designers do their jobs, publicists do their jobs. But without the story, without the storyteller, there is no book.
I think that's good advice. And where can our listeners go if they want to learn more about you or the stories you've written?
Grab me on Facebook, Devon C. Ford. I'm on Twitter, but I'm not very good at Twitter, so bear with me. I want to take Twitter back in time, tie it to a stake and burn it for witchcraft, because I don't get it. But anyway, I try on Twitter, better on Facebook. You can get me on my website, devoncford.com. Scroll down to the bottom, hit subscribe, you'll get my emails, and you can email me there.
Well, we'll put links for everything over in the show notes at leigendarium.com. Thank you for taking time out of your day and coming on 30-Minute Author Interviews. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Well, that is all the time that we have for this week's episode of 30-Minute Author Interviews. Thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure you tune in next Wednesday and every Wednesday for another great author interview. Don't forget to head on over to Leigendarium.com and find the show notes for this episode. In the show notes, you're going to find the giveaway where Devon C. Ford is giving one person the chance to win an ebook copy of his entire series After It Happened. Also in the show notes, you're going to find the link to our sponsors, the Galactic Satori Chronicles by Nick Breaker and Paul E. Hicks, and also Out of the Gray by Patricia Gilliam. Let them know that you heard about them right here on 30-Minute Author Interviews. And don't miss another episode of the podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. I would also like to thank a few of our Patreon supporters. I would like to thank Third Scribe, Maggie Stewart Grant, and Nick Breaker. They're supporting 30-Minute Author Interviews through Patreon. They are also receiving the Patreon-only podcast 10 Questions With. Visit patreon.com/Leigendarium and find out how you can support 30-Minute Author Interviews for as little as $1 a month. Until next time, stay legendary.